Hi guys, I have all of our ingredients out in front of us to make la tartiflette. This is what we chose to do. It's a dish from the mountain region of France, which is very heavy on French cheese. So we're gonna start with some russet potatoes. I grabbed a 5-pound bag. We're not gonna need this many, but I will see exactly how many it'll take to fill up my little 8x8 pan. So a couple different things you could use. You could use a small square pan like this. You could use a cast iron pan or a 9x13. It's really whatever type of oven safe baking dish that you have that would suit best for your family. I'm just gonna make a small one today. So we have our potatoes, our onions. This honestly is to taste. If you like onions, then go for both. I'm gonna kind of play it by ear. I'll chop up one to begin with, see how many that is. I don't love onions, so we'll see as we go. I have a 16-ounce container of sour cream here. Traditionally, this would be made with crème fraîche in France, which just has a little bit of a higher fat content than sour cream does, but we don't have that here in the US. I'm sure I could find it, but I wanted to make sure that I'm using things that are accessible to all of us. So I found all of this stuff at Market Basket. So sour cream will be fine, and then it won't be quite as thick and heavy of a dish as in France. I got the thick sliced bacon from Market Basket. Thin slice would be fine too. Traditionally, this would be made with des lardons, which are just these little, it's like pancetta if you've had that before, but once again, that can get kind of pricey and it's hard to find. So this will work perfectly. We'll just cut it up before we fry it. And then just the traditional things you would find in your cupboard, like some olive oil, salt, pepper. We can add cayenne if you want to, or paprika, but it's not traditional. And then I went for a brie. Traditionally, this would be done with reblochon, which is a cheese from the mountain region in France. We don't have access to that in the US. You could go for a camembert, which is a more pungent, stronger cheese, but it's more expensive. I just went with the cheaper Market Basket brie. This is a milder cheese. It's still gonna be pretty harsh if you've never had a French soft cheese before, but this one will still give you the flavor and the consistency that you're looking for. The other thing that you will need, so as I said, the baking dish, any form of cutting board, a pan, and then a large pot to boil our potatoes with. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is get our potatoes boiling. You're gonna want a large pot just so they have enough room in there and you have enough room for the water to fill them completely. So first thing I did was scrub these down. You wanna make sure they are washed to get all the dirt off, and then you will put them in your pot. We are leaving them in the jacket. That way it'll preserve some of that flavor and it won't overcook quite as much. So you're going to fill them just maybe like 2 inches above where they're sitting in the pot. And so just a little bit more water than where the potatoes are sitting. It's important to start with cold water instead of boiling the water and then putting the potatoes in. We start with the water cold and then bring all the potatoes up to temperature with each other. That way they are evenly conducting the heat. So I'm going to bring this to a boil, and once it starts boiling, we will bring it down to a simmer to cook for the rest of the time. I'm also going to heavily salt the water. That way this can bring out some of the flavors in the potato. All right, the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to prepare my onion and bacon mixture that we will get going in the pan. So for those of you like myself who have dogs running around, please make sure you are very careful with onions because this is something that is very toxic to dogs. So as we're cutting our onions, make sure it stays on your countertop. If one falls, be quick to get it before your pup does. That way you don't have to worry about them getting sick. Okay, so all I did was I cut it in half down the middle this way, and then I peeled the outer layers of the onion off. So now I'm going to very carefully dice this up into small pieces. If you haven't used a large knife before or cut vegetables, please make sure you're very careful. And if you need to, just have somebody else come in and help you out, so a parent or an adult. Okay, so what I did is I just sliced off the ends here, and then I sliced it down this way. But like I said, please make sure you're being very careful. And now I'm just going to turn it and dice this way. Okay, so I diced my onion, and it doesn't have to be anything crazy. If you want to leave them in the longer strands, that's totally fine too. It's really just a family thing, so every household can make this different. I prefer diced onions. As I said, I'm not a huge fan of onions, but if you like them, you can leave them in the longer strings. You just wouldn't have that extra step and dice. So I added them to my pan, so they are in here now, and then I'm just going to cook them over like a medium heat, maybe a little bit less than that. Just watch your stove because it really, everybody's stove is a little bit different. We're gonna check on our potatoes. Like I said, once they start to boil, we're gonna bring them down to a simmer. So they're starting to simmer a little bit now, so I'm gonna leave them at high for just a little bit longer. Okay, so now that we have our onions going, I'm just gonna throw in just a little bit of olive oil just to get them going. And then I'm going to cut up our bacon. So I actually only ended up using half of an onion. Like I said, it's totally up to you. We're going to layer it once on here, and since I'm using a smaller pan, I think that is plenty with the bacon mixture. So now as I have my onion cooking, because that'll take longer than our bacon, I'm going to just chop this up pretty finely. No, we can't, or you can have some after. Actually, it's gonna be cooked with onions, so we can't. Okay, be very careful because this bacon is very slippery. So what I would do is I would do it in pieces. So I'm gonna do it one at a time just to make sure that the knife doesn't slip and we don't have any accidents. So just very small pieces. Make sure your knife is nice and sharp. And once again, if you have never used a knife before, make sure that you have a parent to help you out with this one. So I didn't end up using all of my bacon. This should be more than enough. If I decide that I need some more, then I'll put more in. So I'm gonna bring this over to my pan, and I'm gonna add it in with the onions. And I did turn down the heat on the onions just because they were getting a little bit too brown too quickly. So once they are pretty much done, you'll notice that there are some brown bits on the bottom of your pan. Mine is non-stick, so unfortunately I don't get any of that. But that is where most of your flavor is going to be. So what we're going to do is we're going to deglaze our pan. As I said, I don't have anything on the bottom because mine's a non-stick pan, so I can't really show you. But you would take about 1/4 cup of chicken broth or chicken stock. It doesn't need to be much just because there's already a lot of liquid in the pan from the bacon fat. And we're just going to pour that in there. Traditionally, this is done with a white wine. we're gonna use chicken broth, which is totally fine. And when you have that liquid in there, you just wanna scrape up the brown bits on the bottom of your pan. And this is going to give your dish a lot more flavor. And then you will just continue to stir it until most of the liquid has dissolved or evaporated. Also, make sure you're being careful with your pan. Try to use either like a rubber spatula or a wooden spoon to scrape that up. Don't use metal utensils, because if you do, you're risking ruining the pan. So just be very careful when you are scraping those brown bits off of the bottom. And then make sure we're keeping an eye on our potatoes. Come on over. Watch out for it. You should be able to put the knife in, and it should go in pretty easily. These are still a little bit hard, so I'm going to keep them in there for just a little bit longer. I turned the heat up because they weren't cooking like I would like them to. So we'll keep them in there a little bit longer. We don't want them to be mushy, like the consistency of a mashed potato. We want them to still hold their form because we're going to slice them. So they just need a little bit longer. This is pretty much done as soon as that chicken broth evaporates. So my potatoes are just about done. So notice how when I put the knife in, it goes in pretty easily. But it's not mushy. There's still a little bit of give to it. So I'm going to turn the heat off, and then I'm going to strain these. Okay, so be very careful with the potatoes because they're very, very hot. All I did is I poured them out into a colander in my sink, but they're still incredibly hot because they hold their heat really well. So now we're just going to peel them out of their jackets. It's really easy. You can just get a little bit of a rip going with a fork, and they will peel right off. As I said, be very careful because they're still very warm. You could definitely do this ahead of time. Let them cool off, give them that time, and it'll be much easier for you. Let's see how easy that just pulls right off. Okay, so since my potato is peeled, I'll peel the rest soon. I am going to preheat my oven to 375 while I get these cutting. And also, if you want to use a peeler, that works really well too, and it was super quick and easy. Okay, so I'm going to butter my baking dish here. That way nothing gets stuck in it. If you just have like a Pam spray, that's totally fine too. I'm literally just taking this and rubbing it in the dish, and it'll grease it up for me. Would you like some butter, camper? I don't think this is for you. Make sure you get into the corners. That way it will be all set. What's going on, Cam? All right, so this should be good. And now I am going to take my slices. So I would say you want them about this thick. A little thinner, a little thicker is okay too. That way we can really layer them. So I'm going to take my potatoes and layer them with a little bit of a cross, an overlap. All right, so once we have one layer done, I'm going to take some sour cream, and we are going to layer it on top of this first layer of potatoes. And this, I would say, you could do a decent layer. If you don't love sour cream, you don't have to go heavy-handed, but you want to make sure that you do cover the potatoes. So here is my sour cream on top of my potatoes. As I said, I didn't go super heavy-handed on it. It's a pretty decent amount. I wouldn't say it's thin, whatever you prefer. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take our mixture from earlier. I'm going to use a slotted spoon just because there's still a little bit of liquid left in mine. So we are going to just layer this on top. You want a good, healthy layer of this because this is the only layer we will be doing of this mixture. So I used all of my bacon and onion mixture. I didn't end up using the whole pack of bacon. I think there's about 3 or 4 slices left in the fridge. I probably could have gone for all of it. So if you love bacon, go ahead and cook up all of that. Same with the onion. I probably could have done that second half. But I definitely, if you're doing something bigger than an 8x8, I would for sure cook up everything that you got. Because, I mean, it's definitely enough. It looks good, but I could have gone with everything just to add a little bit more of that bacon flavor in there. So now that that's done, I'm going to add another layer of the potato. So just like we did before with our thin slices, we are just going to layer it right on top. We're gonna take a potty break for camper. Okay, so I have put the rest of my sour cream on the top layer. I did end up using the entire 16-ounce container of sour cream, so that is completely gone. And I ended up using, I think, 3 potatoes, 3 pretty large potatoes. So I would make 4 just so you have a little bit extra, and then you can always use the 4th one for whatever you need. If you're going to make a larger tartiflette, then you would need more potatoes. So now is the star of the show, our brie, which, as I said, I would prefer to do camembert, but it's much more expensive. These were $3.50 each versus the brie was $5.99 for one. I mean, the camembert, excuse me. So the Market Basket brie was $3.50. The camembert was $5.99. I didn't know if I needed 2 or 3, and I'm not gonna spend $6 for cheese to put on a dish. So this is what we're working with. This is also a much milder cheese for my picky eaters. You may be better with this one. So we are going to leave the rind on. This white piece here is edible. It adds a very different flavor. If you're a picky eater, it may be a little tough for you, but that's okay. Once the cheese melts and the dish is done, you can always just pull the rind off if you don't like it. So I'm just going to cut this straight in half, and then we will put it on top. So we're going to just cut it right down the middle. Be very, very careful. I don't think that was the best cut, but that's okay. So it is super, super sticky. Okay, so here's what it looks like on the inside. It's super sticky. What I'm gonna do is I'm going to put the cheese side down on the top of the dish. And what this is gonna do is this soft, soft cheese here is going to melt in with my sour cream and create a sauce. And it is very, very good. So we'll just put that straight down. So I added my brie. I ended up doing all of it. It's a lot. You could cut these in half and have them half and half over here if you want to. I'm just gonna go for it because I know that I like this cheese. Also, I tried this one and it is very mild for a brie. Typically, this would be a much stronger cheese than it is the Market Basket brand. So if you've never had it before, or if you're a picky eater, I think you'll be okay with this. The other thing that I had said, if you don't want to try French cheese, you don't want to try this, you could add mozzarella on top or cheddar to get a stronger taste. It would still be really, really good. But that soft, like squishy cheese that I showed you on the inside with that sour cream is really what makes that beautiful sauce. It's super rich, super decadent. It is not good for you, we're not gonna lie, but camper chill. But it is very, very good. So I'm going to put this into my preheated oven. It's preheated at 375. I'm gonna watch it, come back in about 30 minutes and see if it is good to go. Our potatoes are pretty much cooked. So is as soon as the cheese is fully melted and Camper, hey. As soon as the cheese is fully melted and the potatoes are soft, then it's good to go. Okay, all right, so I just took it out of the oven. You can see that it's all super bubbly down here. It honestly can even take more time in the oven where you would want all of the tops to be browned. I unfortunately, rookie mistake, spilled, I did not put something underneath it and a little bit of the cheese spilled out. So now the bottom of the oven is burning. So I took mine out a little bit early. Do not make that mistake. Make sure you put a pan underneath this. That way it'll catch any of that spills and then it won't burn.